Good evening, everybody. We'll start with these. One of the commonest problems that being faced in the extrahepatic biliary tree, also called Merici syndrome. About 20% of the cases of Merici can be a malignant thing, mimicking as a Merici, which is identified by the elevation of CA99, which is more than 1000. Also loss of appetite and loss of weight and the presence of mass. So that I will tell you subsequently. Today we will talk about Merici. Before going to Merici, we will have a rough idea about the anatomy of extrahepatic biliary tree. The two hepatic ducts, right and left, joins at the confluence becomes a common hepatic duct, which is being joined by the gallbladder cystic duct, and the cystic duct common hepatic junction is this. Beyond that is called common bile duct. Common bile duct has got a supraduodenal portion, a retroduodenal portion, an intrapancreatic portion again into the lumen. That's how it is. Again, I'll tell you, a suprapancreatic portion of CBD, the supraduodenal, retroduodenal, retropancreatic, and it forms along with the common channel most of the time, more than 60% of the cases, with the pancreatic duct, and opens into the second part of the duodenum on the medial wall called the ampulla vata. And this is the opening with the accessory pancreatic duct of Santorini. The right and left ductal system actually has got a segmental supply. The right divides into an anteromedial and a posterolateral. The anteromedial segments contains 5 and 8. So again it divides into an anterior superior branch going to 8, an inferior branch coming to segment 5. So segment 5 and 8 are the medial most. Next, this is the posterolateral duct, which again divided into 6 and 7. So the whole thing contributes to the right hepatic duct. You see, this is the left hepatic duct. The left hepatic duct has a longer transverse course extrahepatically compared to the right duct. Right duct immediately dips into it, whereas the left duct has got a good transverse this thing. Then it becomes segment 3 duct, segment lateral segment and medial segment. That is the whole confluence, then becomes the common hepatic duct. See, these ducts are guarded by certain number of sphincters, especially the CBD has got altogether 3 sphincters. That is a superior sphincter, that is muscular. This is submucosa, that is sphincter number 2, or the inferior sphincter, and both combine and joins the sphincter of. This is the periampullary area, sphincter ampulla. This is the pancreatic sphincter. So that is how it is. So the bile duct has got 2 sphincters along with the ampullary sphincter, where the pancreatic duct has got 2 sphincters along with the 1 sphincter along with the ampullary sphincter. Introduction, pathology and classification. Way back in 1931, the first operative cholangiography done by Fabio Luis Merici, and he discovered the syndrome after 17 years. That is called, he called it as an hepatic duct syndrome. It refers to common hepatic duct obstruction. The extrinsic compression from an impacted stone in the cystic duct or the Hartmann pouch of the gallbladder causes an extraneous compression leading to a certain amount of obstructive phenomenon in the whole of the biliary tree. May or may not be associated with cholangitis. Incidence is about 72%, 0.72%. Now you can see a beautiful diagram. There are multiple stones in the gallbladder. That is the cystic duct. The cystic duct almost cloud over the stone here that is called the infundibulum. If you are not careful, you are likely to injure the CBD here. This is type 1 Mirizi. Because of the compression here, the distended proximal IHBR, there's an inflammation and edema of this CBD there. There's an impacted gallstone. Because of that, there is a distended gallbladder. Pathophysiology. The impacted stone plus inflammation due to obstruction causes first external obstruction of the bile duct, eventually erodes into a bile duct by constant irritation, and the second stage may go into a choledochal, cholecystocoledochal fistula. No more the cystic duct prevails there. It becomes one communication between the gallbladder and the common bile duct. Pathology, acute or chronic inflammation, secondary to a single large ductal stone, may or may not be associated with multiple small stones in the rest of the gallbladder, impacted the Hartmann's pouch or the infundibulum or the cystic duct. The real risk factors are a long cystic duct, which can easily get adhered to the common hepatic duct, or a cystic duct running parallel to the bile duct, so they are incongruent with each other, so that the stone can erode into it, or sometimes the low insertion of the cystic duct into the bile duct. These are associated risk factors to precipitate a Mirizi in a case of a gallstone disease. Classification, one is McSherry, the other one is Sendus. Sendus is used in clinical practice because it is divided rather into 5 types, whereas McSherry has got only 2, either a Mirizi or a cholecystocystic fistula. This is McSherry in 1982. External compression of bile duct by a large stone. Stone impacted in the cystic duct or in the Hartmann's pouch, that type 1. The moment it erodes and joins the common bile duct, it's called a cholecystobiliary fistula. But this has not given us enough roadmap for our surgical procedure or a treatment armamentarium. Subsequently, Sendus has classified into 5, if I am correct, and 4 years divided into 4A and 4B, or 5 into 5A and 5B. So this is what it is, a simple stone impacted, intact CBD. The whole of the cystic duct is cloud over it. This can be treated by a simple cholecystectomy. I'll come to you subsequently, and it is only causing a partial obstruction of the CBD here. The LFT may show elevated enzyme, especially increased serum bilirubin, the direct portion, and also AFP increase. This is type 2. This is 1/3 of the circumference of the common hepatic duct wall is gone. 1/3 is gone. So this is almost become a cholecystocoledochal fistula, but the treatment for this is little varied comparing to the coming up groups. This is 2/3 is gone, and almost the stone is entering into the CBD and causing a near total obstruction. This is called type 3. Type 4, there is no cystic duct at all. It has become one common channel, and the complete circumference is gone. The whole thing is in one channel and it is obstructing here. This is cholecystocoledochal fistula. Type 4. Type 5 is a cholecystoenteric fistula. It can be with gallstone ileus. Gallstone ileus is nothing but a stone going into the small bowel, obstructing somewhere near the terminal ileum, where the ileum is very narrow and it causes obstruction, one of the dangerous conditions. You will be able to do it. First you treat the obstructive phenomenon occurring in the small bowel, then you go for a definitive surgery here. Or without gallstone ileus. This is without gallstone ileus. How to go about it, I'll let you know. This is the rate of occurrence about 75%, 10 to 75 is type 1 Mirizi, 15 to 41 is type 2 Mirizi, 3 to 44 is type 3, type 4 is 1 to 4, is type 5 is 29. Cholecystobiliary fistula. First mechanism I've shown you, causing an impacted stone, causing a compression, and then leading to ulcer. The ulcer leads to a cholecystocystic fistula. The second mechanism, impacted gallstone at the infundibulum, dilate the cystic duct, leading to shortening. As the dilatation of the cystic duct occurs, slowly there will be fibrosis and shortening of the cystic duct. What was 1 centimeter will become hardly about 0.1 millimeter, 0.1 centimeter. So the whole thing is gloved and fibrosed over a stone, leading to shortening, contraction, fibrosis of the duct. Forms a large communication between the gallbladder and bile duct, that is type 4, even fusing the gallbladder to the adjacent bile duct. This is the pathogenesis of Mirizi of various stages. Clinical features, investigation and management. The mean age is between 50 and 70. Female predominates a male. It's due to a long-standing gallstone disease. The patient will give you a now and then pain, something like a gallstone ileus, or the patient may come with acute cholecystitis with conservative line of management. The patient may go back. In gallstone ileus, it causes obstruction because of distension of the gallbladder. Stone slips back again. The bile empties and the pain comes down. Acute presentation is more common than chronic. A recent history of obstructive jaundice with evidence of fever, chills, and rigors. Something like the 3 combination. What is that? Not Raynaud's painted. What is it? Saint Strad. Charcot Strad can come. It can present as acute cholecystitis or acute cholangitis. Sorry, I'm forgetting the names. Can't help it. Obstructive jaundice 60 to 100%. Abdominal pain over the right upper quadrant 50 to 100%. Fever is unknown or a suspected gallstone disease. Fever, if there is a gallstone disease, it could be due to gallstone disease. Or if a suspecting a gallstone disease, the fever may be due to that. Lab finding, that direct hyperbilirubinemia. Now, one point for all the postgraduate, anywhere direct fraction is more than the indirect fraction, it tells you a cholestasis. That means there is a normal conjugation going on, but there is stasis. Because of the stasis, the bile is not thrown into the gut. A direct hyperbilirubinemia is due to cholestasis, can be due to obstruction, or can be due to some drugs, can be due to stricture. Wherever there is a bile stasis, you will get direct hyperbilirubinemia. This is a take-home message for you. Many of you were not aware. Once there is a chronic obstruction, there is certain amount of a parenchymal involvement which leads to an SGOT and SGPT raise. There is a leukocytosis in acute cholecystitis, cholangitis, and pancreatitis. With polymorphonuclear leukocytosis more, it will be somewhere in the range of 20,000, whereas 85 to 95,000 will be the granulocytes. Increased CA19-9 is common in all obstructive jaundice. If it's due to a stone disease, it may not be very high. If it is due to a stone disease associated cholangitis and all, will give you a substantial support that it's only a benign pathology. And loss of appetite and loss of weight is a very important thing to rule out clinically a malignancy there. But CA19-9 will be increased. One more thing that will increase is AFP level. AFP level is the first thing to go wherever there is obstruction to even a tertiary biliary canaliculi due to a small secondary. Why it goes? Because the obstructed biliary tree throws away more of alkaline phosphatase from the lining biliary epithelium, and that is shown. But that has not been mentioned here. But serum alkaline phosphatase is one of the indicators to say early obstruction. Even in abscess liver, it will go up. Anywhere there is a compression of the biliary, primary, secondary, tertiary, canaliculi, it will have an elevated ALP. Preoperative diagnosis should be followed by thoughtful surgical planning. If you do not make a substantial preoperative diagnosis and a thoughtful surgical plan, your bile duct injuries are to the range of about 20%, as high as that. Inadequate recognition of this condition leads to high preoperative morbidity in the form of bile leak, abscess, stricture, so on and so forth. And there is a substantial percentage of mortality if it is handled by an inadequately experienced surgeon. Ultrasonography, a contracted gallbladder with thick walls with stone impacted in the infundibulum. This is one of the ultrasound finding. The common hepatic dilatation above the level of the obstruction site, and it has got a poor diagnostic sensitivity and accuracy regarding the Mirizi. Mirizi is a combination of everything: clinical features, obstructive jaundice, and the contracted gallbladder, proximal dilatation of the IHBR, central or peripheral IHBRD, associated cholangitis. These all put together to a clinician's mind that it could be a Mirizi. That is why it is. This is the gallbladder, and this is the dilated. This is the compressed cystic duct. Right? Yes. Okay, stone impacted. Where is the stone? Right. This is the stone impacted in the cystic duct. This is narrowing of cystic duct calculi, and common hepatic duct is compressed. Computed tomography is not very diagnostic, but if a good clinician put everything into mind, along with a supportive computed tomography, can come to a reasonable diagnosis in more than 80% of the cases. The best thing would be an MRC or an MRCP compared to a computed tomography to find out a Mirizi. Identified gallbladder wall thickness, bile duct dilatation, periductal inflammation. Presence of periductal inflammation can be misinterpreted as gallbladder cancer. Radiological signs elicited by the CT are not specific. The main utility CT is exclusion of malignancy. You can see a stone impacted in the gallbladder, pressurizing on the common hepatic duct. That is what it is. Correct? The MRCP demonstrates an extrinsic compression of the bile duct and presence of fistula. Typical features: extrinsic narrowing of the common hepatic duct, gallstone in the cystic duct, dilatation of the intrahepatic and common hepatic duct. Diagnostic accuracy in MRCP is to the tune of 50%. You can see how beautifully the thing is compressed, and that is the stone impacted, causing a compression with a proximal dilatation of the IHBRD. It's more a central IHBRD, not peripherally, not being this thing. This is Mirizi syndrome on a MRCP, CBD, CHD, dilated intrahepatic with this thing. That is where the stone is impacted. There is the gallbladder. PRCP has got no current role in Mirizi except, again I'm coming, except if the patient has got cholangitis, the patient's general condition is very poor, not amenable for surgery, a stent bypassing the stone can decompress the biliary tree, and so that it will give you a breathing time. You can take patient with more prepared condition so that you can do a definitive surgery. Except that the ERCP has got no role. Once to remember, no imaging modality is highly accurate for Mirizi. Clinical suspicion of prime importance in diagnosis. Diagnosis is made by high suspicion, correlating clinical, laboratory, and imaging findings. Very important is clinical. Laboratory will give you the obstructive pathology. Imaging will, when you correlate these two, we can roughly come out to about 90 to 95%. That's the case of medicine. Clinical features, again I'm telling you, there is a loss of weight and loss of appetite. One should think in terms of malignancy. If the CA99 is increased grossly, that is more than 1000, again it is in favor of malignancy. Record it in your mind. Intraoperative diagnosis, 50 patients are diagnosed, 50% during surgery, a shrunken gallbladder with a distorted anatomy, a dilated gallbladder with thick walls and a large stone, an impacted the gallbladder neck or the infundibulum, an obliterated calyx, a dense fibrotic mass at the calyx. All these tells you that it is more likely a medicine. It's a beautiful case which we have operated, but we could get away with a simple cholecystectomy in this case because we were very careful. The arrow is pointing the long cystic duct, and you can see a stone that is impacted in the cystic duct. So we could go beyond here and tie it. We could remove the whole thing. Am I correct? Yeah, somewhere we made an incision, went into it and tied it. That's what it is. No? Below tail. Here. You can see the starting of the. Yes. So that is the operated specimen. You can see how it is impacted in the neck of the gallbladder. Intraoperative cholangiography, I am not very much in favor. I believe in my preoperative assessment and I believe in my fingers rather than a cholangiography because false positives are more in cholangiography if you are not careful. You are likely to inject air which will mimic a stone that will confuse you. To confirm the diagnosis, to determine the location, the size of the fistula, detect the bile duct stone, detect whether there is any loss in integrity of the bile duct bone. All these can be well made out by a good clinical assessment with laboratory investigation and imaging. So I don't believe, but you should not tell your examiner. You will have to know about your intraoperative cholangiography, how it is being done, what are the precautions you will take, everything. If there is a patent cystic duct, it is better to do through a cystic duct and see for the cholangiogram. Otherwise, go above or below. Make a small neck, put an infant feeding catheter, inject it without air, and then take a picture with a C-arm. That is how it is being done. Usually, intraoperative cholangiography is done, to my knowledge, for residual stones, or when you are not clear that you have removed all the CVD stones, or when you are not trying to attempt a choledocho-enteric anastomosis. With the advent of choledocho-enteric anastomosis, which my boys are very familiar, either a choledocho-duodenostomy or a hepatico-jejunostomy, the cholangiography has got minimal role in our department. I think you agree. Treatment, surgery is the mainstay. You have to make a diagnosis. Operative surgery should be used that minimize the risk of injury to the biliary tract. What I am trying to my boys, you all will be doing a lot of extrahepatic biliary work in future. Not that you are general surgeon, other or gastroenterology. You will have to do, you will learn every technique in extrahepatic biliary tree by joining a good hepatobiliary unit and learn this. That is going to be your daily breadwinner. You must know the anatomy well. You must know how to identify the CBD. You must know how to cook the CBD. Everything you should know. Then you are very good and nothing can go wrong. People who have assisted me, people who have worked under me in my department from general surgery knows how to do all that. Type 1 medicine, a simple cholecystectomy, if you are able to make a cleavage here, usually you are lucky to get it with a little stump. Otherwise, try to push this stone a little bit into the gallbladder. Then you can ligate it somewhere. If nothing is possible, cut over here and do a subtotal cholecystectomy and ligate it here. The moment stone comes out, this becomes narrow. You can put a ligature there and be done with it. That is called subtotal cholecystectomy. But type 1 Mersey in my unit, we somehow or other identify and do a classical cholecystectomy, correct? Type 2 Mersey is one of the interesting topic for me because many years I have been doing this. Initially, you must think only in terms of a subtotal cholecystectomy, or if there is a cholecystobiliary fistula during surgery, you can either cut the gallbladder here, let out the stone and suture it in 2 layers, keep a drain and come out. Or if you're not comfortable, ligate the bloody thing here, cut it off and do a side-to-side hepatogeginostomy. The best thing would be to do a subtotal cholecystectomy, cutting exactly over the stone, leaving a good stump and close it in 2 layers with a drain. Usually they become all right. Type 3 subtotal cholecystectomy, I will not advise. I'll rather ligate the whole bloody thing here. Then I'll do a hepatogeginostomy. That is what is the standard in that. There is no role of choledochordiostomy in this because this is far away from the duodenum. We may not get it. So we'll have to do an hepatogeginostomy. This we don't do it at all, putting a patch, bile leak, keeping a T2. Forget about it. It is only for completion of shown. CBD exploration should always be done. Placing a T-tube is not good until otherwise is compulsory. Biliary enteric anastomosis either in the form of a choledochordiodenal duodenostomy or a hepatogeginostomy. Hepatogeginostomy, the best would be a side to side because you need not hook the whole of the CBD. By hooking the whole of the CBD, you may use cautery, which may go in for fibrosis. Future anastomotic stricture is the commonest thing. So better don't do an end to side. Rather, you make a good opening up to the confluence and do a side to side anastomosis. It works out well. Treatment of type 4 Roux-en-Y hepatogeginostomy is the answer. Very easy to do. Now here it is very, very simple. Remove the gallbladder, cut the whole bloody thing, take it off, ligate it, do an hepatogeginostomy. Finished. This is one of the precarious things. What we do is, I'll tell you, we ligate it here. We do a hepatogeginostomy. Sometimes this may not be any stones, 1 or 2. We can milk it into this and bring it out and ligate it here completely in 2 layers without dividing. Give a good stump and divide it somewhere there. But this is a very rare type. We don't get it at all. If you get it, you can do it easily. Hook the CBD there, ligate it here so that occludes the fistula. If there are stones, make an incision somewhere there, let out all the stones and put a nice ligature as low as possible. That's all, that finishes the job. Mersey type 4B, cholecystoenteric fistula with gallstone ileus. Gallstone ileus must be treated properly because the prognosis, if you don't treat the small bowel obstruction, is very, very difficult. You will have to do an enterotomy and relieve the gallstone. If it is possible, push it into this large bowel, then it will get emptied on its own. Best thing is to do an ileotomy and remove it. After the general condition of the patient stabilizes, after it becomes all right, do a cholecystectomy or choledochordiostomy or gygnostomy according to the type it has. Laparoscopy, people are doing, it requires real experience, it has got a long learning curve, the risk of bile duct injuries are more. Don't try to do more than type 1 Mersey. Type 2 Mersey and higher is not recommended for a minimally invasive procedure in Mersey. Usually the patient goes in for postoperative complication. Finally, they land with a biliary stricture, which again requires a surgery after 3 months once the system gets dilated. So don't do it except for type 1 Mirizi. That too if you are good, because it has got a linear learning curve. Recent difficult and distorted anatomy, intraoperative ultrasonogram, not a very big issue, you can still do it. Laparoscopic cholecystoscopy is available with very few centers. The person must be very much convalescent with this and he must be able to interpret it, and it requires laparoscopic staplers if you are not good at intracorporeal suturing. Conversion rate is as high as 30 to 100%. Complication is to the tune of 50%. Biliary duct injury is to the tune of 25%. Mortality is also again to the tune of 25%. You don't consider about this zero. Zero and all is bogus. This is the facts. Gallbladder cancer Mirizi, a gallbladder malignancy arising at the infundibulum or in the body of the gallbladder can compress or can infiltrate a CBD and leads to an obstructive jaundice. The thing is more than elevated 100,000 unit per ml, loss of weight, presence of mass, and a CT nicely showing the mass. Incontinuity of the mucosa, irregular thickening of the gallbladder wall. All these are in favor of the gallbladder malignancy, should always suspect. To my knowledge, most of the gallbladder cancers represent to us in the form of an obstructive jaundice, more than 70% to our knowledge presents with the jaundice. Conclusion, Mirizi syndrome continues to be a diagnostic and a management challenge. Condition may not be recognized by routine preoperative imaging, become evident at the time of surgery. I differ this point because I can make out 95% of the Mirizi by a good correlation of clinical, laboratory and imaging technique. I can come to a conclusion. It is suggested by a dense adhesions or a frozen calyx triangle. The reported postoperative surgical mortality all over the world is about 80%. It reflects 8%, reflects the complexity of the managing the patient with this serious biliary disorder. The post-operative morbidity includes external biliary fistula, biliary peritonitis, subphrenic abscess. When you treat all that, the patient may go in for a biliary stricture. Maintaining a high index of suspicion may ensure accurate preoperative diagnosis. This one point is missing. You can have biliary stricture. Biliary stricture, again I'm telling you, the resultant of any nonsense happening in that area will lead on to biliary strictures. If you are lucky, you will have type 1 bismuth. If you are little lesser lucky, type 2. If you are not lucky, it will be type 3 bismuth. So this, along with the vascular or non-vascular complication. So better be very, 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 very careful. High index of suspicion, failure of recognition increases bile duct injury. My children, I am telling you, if you are completely knowledgeable about the intra-operative extra-biliary tract anatomy, what is going in the free body of the lesser omentum, what is its relation to the right hepatic artery, what is its relation to the portal vein, how it divides, if you know everything. One of the easiest thing to do in gastroenterology is a bile duct surgery, extrahepatic biliary duct surgery. Here, this is what I am trying to tell you is, I want every one of you become familiar with an extrahepatic biliary duct surgery, because that will keep you going on. As far as the income is concerned, the outcome will be good. You will get good appreciation from your patients. An attempt at definitive surgical therapy in advanced cases by a non-specialist. I will do anything, you should not do it. Work under a good specialist, either a general surgeon who has got a lot of work, or surgical gastroenterologists who are very good familiar with the hepatobiliary. You work under them and learn. Then a hepatic angiostomy is done by an occasional surgeon. The complications are very, very bad, suboptimal results. right from the beginning of a leak up to the extent of an anastomotic fixture which requires a resurgery. My boys are a little angry because I am inviting you to do these cases, but every surgeon must be familiar with everything in the body. That is my policy. So do aware. This is in short about medicine. Thank you.